Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Checkup Basketball Podcast, Codpast Podcast. I can't speak too well, and that might be troubling news for me, but hey, thank you so much for being here. Today we got a fun video. It's prime slop season in the NBA. There was so much slop today, and if you're living under a rock, today was the NBA's trade deadline, so as always, we get plenty of trades. Feels like trade deadlines ramp up year over year, and I think the trade deadline's kind of replacing free agency, but that's a conversation for another day. The conversations we need to have today are about basketball. Okay, right? Basketball, the sport we love and adore, that I love and adore and want to watch. My face cam's a little frozen right now, but that's okay. We'll figure that out. Anyways, face cam. This podcast is going to have a visual component to it. I think it'll actually have a visual component. So if you want to watch this on YouTube, it will be available there. But otherwise, it will be available in an audio form, of course, as always. But yeah, the goal for this video is to get through every single notable transaction during the trade deadline. I'm not going to worry about like salary dumps and deals where like a team just traded away some end of bench guy for luxury tax savings. Shockingly, I don't really care what billionaire owners do to save themselves money. I care about the product being put out on the court. So I'm going to talk about the product on the court. And if that pisses you off, well, comrade, this just ain't the podcast for you. But shout out to The Score. I'm going to be using their article to go through these trades. That way you all have a visual component to this, and I'm not losing track of any transaction that happened. Okay, so we're not going to waste any time. I'm giving myself no more than 5 minutes apiece to talk about these things. All right, Facecam is back on. That was a bit of a detour. Apologies for that. I don't know where I was, but let's jump into the trades. No more wasting time, okay? We gotta talk these out. Okay, first trade we need to talk about is a three-teamer. Oh, yeah, I love a three-way. But we get the Bulls, Pistons, and Wolves involved in a transaction. The Pistons received Kevin Huerter, Dario Saric, and a first-round pick swap with Minnesota this year. The Bulls received Jaden Ivey and Mike Conley, and the Timberwolves received jack shit. Okay, so what happened here? The Pistons, they give up on Jaden Ivey. Very unfortunate. Kind of tells you where his value was, even as a former top 5 guy. I'm sure teams are questioning the medicals a lot, and the production on the floor has been mixed at best. I think the three-point shooting has been better than anticipated, but all of the other stuff that he was supposed to be elite at coming out of college, the athleticism, the speed, the burst downhill, has just not quite been there as much as you would hope. The defense is meh. Another slight malfunction with the camera there. But again, as I was saying with Ivy, just tell you where his value is at. I think I like this for the Bulls. The only thing the Bulls gave up in this is Kevin Huerter, who is fine, is a theoretical like floor spacing guy, like sharpshooter, but just hasn't been shooting it all that great this year. I could find his stats. They're not particularly awesome. And then they served as the team that took on the Mike Conley money, but Mike Conley actually ends up getting rerouted in another trade. It doesn't matter. The Bulls did a lot of work during this trade deadline to be a team that took on money and took on bad contracts in favor of assets, which I think is very positive for them and is a move in the right direction. So I like this for them. Again, buy low on Jaden Ivey, who was a top 5 pick not that long ago, and see if you can get any juice out of him, even if he's just like a bench guy. Like this is a worthy try, in my opinion. The Pistons get a theoretical floor spacer in Kevin Huerter. Let's look at his stats. I got him right here. Yeah, I mean, averaging about 11 points a game this season, but shooting only 31% from 3 is pretty poor. I like him in transition. I think he like gets to his spots well and actually is like very good at like slipping out in transition and being an outlet pass guy. If you can get the shot to come back around, he's very useful for this Pistons team, which is devoid of a lot of spacing. And I think his defense is really not that bad. It's not great by any means, but it's better than a guy like Duncan Robinson, let's say. So, playoff situation, let's say he gets back up to shooting almost 40% from three, then hey, you might want to play him over Duncan Robinson in the playoffs just because he might hold up a little better on the defensive end. So I like that. The Pistons also take on Dario Saric. Whatever, who cares? Just got to have contracts to make this work. And then they get a first-round swap from Minnesota. So they move up from the 29th pick in this draft to the 24th or something. That's fine. This is a good draft, and you can get a good player there. That's what it is. And then the Timberwolves, this is purely just a dumping the salary. I think I don't know if they got under an apron or under the tax or whatever, but this is a money-saving move for them. Nothing to mention there. Mike Conley wasn't in the rotation. So I like this I think this is okay for the Pistons. I really like this for the Bulls, and the Timberwolves, I don't care. Moving on. So the score here next, they've got for us the Celtics trading for Nikola Vucevic, in the Bulls receiving Anthony Simons and a 2026 second-round pick. On here, it's not labeled what this second-round pick is, but if I remember correctly, it's not a bad second-round pick in this year's draft. It might be like the Pelicans second-round pick or something like that. So a pretty decent second-round pick, I guess, in this upcoming draft. The Bulls finally move on from Nikola Vucevic. They should have done it a year or 2 years ago. I think last year it was rumored that they could have gotten a first-round pick from the Warriors or maybe a protected first-round pick. Absolutely should have done it at the time. But, I guess you didn't have to attach anything to get rid of him at this point, so maybe that's a win. Anthony Simons is going to be on this Bulls team. I don't think he's a buyout candidate. I think he's just going to play out the year, which is kind of a shame because he was settling into a role with the Celtics and was, I think, helpful to them and could be helpful to a good basketball team. We'll see what happens in free agency with him this year. But I like this for the Celtics. They long been rumored looking for a backup big. Vucevic is having a good shooting year, although the defense is just catastrophically bad. I like him as a vet and a pro. He just seems, all of the Bulls reporters that I follow were just talking about how much of a commiserate pro he is, how much they liked having him around. So he's not going to hurt anything in Boston. And honestly, with how good his shooting's been this year, would it be a huge surprise if the second round of the playoffs this year, the Celtics, I don't know, in game 2, Nikola Vucevic scores 10 points in the second quarter, and that is something that helps him win a game? I don't know. Very well could be. So I like this. That's a fine move. Shout out to Vucci Baby, man. I'm going to miss Stacey King screaming Vucci Mane every 10 minutes. And now it's time to talk about what is probably the craziest move from this deadline. The most stunning one for sure, not to steal the words on the page in front of me, but stunning is certainly a way to describe the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade. So, if you're not familiar or if you need a little refresher, the Utah Jazz traded Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, George Niang, and 3 first-round picks. The first 2 first-rounders are kind of meh, whatever. There's a 2027 Lakers pick. I think it's the best of a Utah, Cleveland, and Minnesota pick in 2027 as well. And then a 2031 unprotected Phoenix Suns pick. That's easily the best pick in this trade. That's a very enticing one to me. I like that. The other 2 firsts are meh, kind of fine. They're probably back half of the first round, I think, at best. And in return, the Jazz got Jaren Jackson Jr., Jacques Landale, Vince Williams Jr., and John Conchar. Okay, first let's talk about Utah's side of this, and we'll talk about Memphis. So for Utah, this is obviously their like let's get serious trade. They've been kind of in this middling tank rebuild thing for like 4 years now. They haven't really had the lottery luck to jump up and get a top 2 or 3 pick in all that time, but they also haven't committed super hard to the tank. I mean, last year they kind of did, but all it resulted in for them was, I think, the 5th pick is where they got Ace. So this is their signal, like, hey, we're done rebuilding, we're done tanking, like, we're making a serious move, we're trying to build a team. And their idea of a team is putting Jaren Jackson Jr. next to Walker Kessler, Lauri Markkanen, and Keontae George, and going super jumbo ball, having 3 7-footers in your front court, and just saying, like, we're just going to be big, we're going to be huge. We're bringing JJJ in to kind of help fix the defensive woes we've had here. We're bringing a dynamic kind of offensive guy in, like somebody that they don't have. And I can't help but, like, I just don't like this for Utah. Utah's not anywhere close to, like, a even really slightly competitive team. Maybe if they played Keontae George and Lauri Markkanen every night, they would be more competitive, but they're like 15-35 right now, maybe 16-35. Like, they're an awful team. And Jaren Jackson Jr., who I think is a valuable player, is just not, I don't know. I mean, maybe he's a bit more of a floor raiser than he is like a ceiling raiser kind of guy, just because and I like having Walker Kessler come back. If that is the plan, to be the 5-man, you need a 5 who's like a really strong rebounder and kind of just a big body to put next to JJJ, so he can be like a weak side shot blocker and like a switchy perimeter defender. That's where he works best on the defensive end. That's how he won Defensive Player of the Year. So I do like that, but I don't think he can fix up all the problems they have defensively. Their point of attack defense is still going to be very, very poor. And the offense, I think, is going to be really clunky. Will Hardy is like a very smart sets and play type kind of guy, so I could see him like making it work. But Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. are two of the worst like passing high volume ball handling players in the NBA. I can't remember the stat, but amongst people that have the usage that they do, they're basically like the 2 worst passers of that group. I like Keontae George a lot, but I'm just not sure if he's like a primary facilitator type of guy for like a very good team. You need more ball handling and more passing on this team, I think, to make the offense work. I could see how the defense works, but to make the offense work, I don't know. And I think the rest of the roster is too far away for the Jazz to be really competitive. And the other thing, too, is like the Jazz desperately need to keep their pick this year. The Jazz's pick this year is protected top 8. If it stays within the top 8, the Jazz keep it. If it falls out of the top 8, it goes to the Thunder. So I assume they're going to find magical injuries for Jaren Jackson Jr. and Keontae George and Lauri Markkanen and just try to lose out the rest of the season to keep that pick. Because if they give away that pick, this trade makes even less sense to me, because they desperately need to get like one more piece in there, I think. So I don't know. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a good player. I'm going to like his defensive pairing with Walker Kessler. I think there is definitely some like interesting offensive stuff that could happen. It's Will Hardy. I really trust in him as a smart coach. I'm glad to see like Will Hardy get the chance to put together a competitive roster. This feels like when I was watching Mark Daigneault during the tank, and it's just like, Mark Daigneault is such a better coach than somebody who deserves to coach like a 20-win team every season. But alas, outside of this, like, the Jazz also got Vince Williams Jr. in this trade, and I kind of like that. Vince Williams Jr. is like a really interesting guy. He's having a bad shooting season, but he does a lot of other things well. Specifically, he's a very, very solid passer. He's not a guy you're going to be able to plug into the starting lineup, but he might be able to make some bench lineups work for the Jazz. The Jazz also already rerouted Jacques Landale to the Hawks, so he's no longer a part of the roster. And then John Conchar will be around for good vibes. Shout out to legendary Purdue Fort Wayne alum John Conchar. But yeah, for the Jazz, like, this is fine, I guess. I also don't love that Jaren Jackson Jr. just signed like a huge contract in the offseason. He's getting paid a bunch of money for a really long time. That scares me. That scares me a lot. But, and especially just because it's such a loaded Western Conference. I mean, are the Jazz making this trade with the intention of being like a top 4 team next year? Or are they okay with just like being a top 8 or like the 7th seed? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I would assume they want to be a playoff team, a bona fide playoff team, so top 6. But I don't know that they are that with JJJ. For the Grizzlies, they're done with this version of the team. It's really sad how fast we went from all the like post-game interview stuff and the dog mentality and the being the 2nd seed in the West for 2 consecutive seasons and like setting up as contenders for a long time to all of a sudden like it feels like we blinked our eyes and the entire team has been torn down. This is really not a bad return, I think, for Jaren Jackson Jr., given the cap environment that we're in. I'd be really curious to know what the other offers on the table were from other teams, or if other teams were really aware that like he was available. Like I said earlier, I think this 2031 Phoenix first rounder going to Memphis is really interesting. That could be a very good pick. The other 2 are both fine, but they're going to convey, so they're going to get like 2 back half of the first round picks in this. I think Memphis is one of the best drafting teams in the NBA. If you look at their track record, Cedric Coward, Zach Edey, JJJ, Ja before all the crazy stuff happened. They found Desmond Bane at like pick 30. Santi Aldama was a 2nd rounder. Vince Williams Jr., Cam Spencer, like all these dudes that they drafted and have been, important to their team in one way or another at a certain point. Like, it's very impressive. They're a very, very good drafting team. So they're going to hit the reset button. They're going to tank the rest of this year, see what pick they get in this next draft. And then moving forward, they're going to build around, Cedric Coward, Zach Edey, Cam Spencer, kind of this other young core that they have. That's interesting. Taylor Hendricks is an interesting, like, buy low young guy. Listening to this, you probably don't know who Taylor Hendricks is, but I don't know. He's kind of like a rangy, athletic 4. He broke his leg a couple of seasons back, and he just really hasn't been the same since, which was really unfortunate. But theoretically, if he can start knocking down some threes, he's like an interesting toolsy kind of physical 4. And then Walter Clayton Jr., who is kind of an older rookie point guard. He played at Florida last year. I liked his game leading up into the draft. He's not really had the chance to do anything this season, so he should get some run in Memphis. All right, yet again, some more technical difficulties for me. So I'm struggling tonight. The internet is not agreeing with me. I do apologize, although I think to anyone that's listening, it's not going to sound like anything happened. But I promise I'm having a rough time over here. So please pray for me. But anyways, I think I was talking about the return the Grizzlies got for Jaren Jackson Jr. I talked a little bit about Taylor Hendricks. Interesting buy low guy to me. I'm not sure what's there. They also got Walter Clayton Jr. as another young guy in this trade. He was a senior point guard at Florida last year. I really liked him throughout the draft process. He's like an interesting he was a really good shooter in college. So I thought that would translate. And he's just like a smart, like capable point guard who can just run an offense and does really solid things. He's not like crazy big or crazy small. I thought he'd be a great backup point guard in the NBA. That's maybe what he'll be for Memphis. I kind of like him for them. But yeah, I think all in all, to sum up my feelings on the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade, I'm not really sure why Utah did it. I guess it's a bit of a wait and see. We'll see how like good or bad this makes them. But Jaren Jackson Jr. got paid a shitload of money last offseason, and I'm not sure I'd want to be the guy who's paying him all that money. add in the fact that you're going to have to give Keontae George probably a max contract extension in this offseason, and Utah can end up stuck like very fast. Or they could be a lot better than I think, and I could look really dumb. But we shall see. We shall see. Shout-outs out to Memphis. They're a good drafting team. This might be a shorter rebuild than we think. Moving on to yet another trade. The gift that keeps on giving, that is James Harden. Maybe the single funniest NBA player of all time. He's up there. This dude's comical. Like, do y'all remember, like, in the days before he left Houston, he just got, like, fat as hell? It was just, like, walking up and down the court. That ruled. Remember when he told a bunch of Chinese kids that Daryl Morey is a liar and he would never play for him ever again? That ruled. When he just kind of like pieced out of the Brooklyn situation, that was very funny. When he pieced out of the Philly situation, that was very funny. And now he's piecing out of the Clippers situation. It's very funny yet again. If we are going to talk about the basketball fit for the Cavs, I don't know. I guess this is fine. James Harden plays basketball games and he wins a lot of regular season games. Like, he's always done that throughout his career. So, in that regards, this is fine. I think he has another year on his contract after this. And seemingly he wanted to go to Cleveland. He wanted to leave the Clippers. Let's be clear here. He wanted to leave the Clippers because they didn't want to pay him his next contract, or they didn't want to extend him or whatever. And he said, all right, F you guys. If you're not going to pay me, I'm going to go somewhere where someone will pay me. And that's kind of been his MO throughout his career. And so seemingly you would think the Cavs want to pay him his next contract. But he's got another year after this one. He's going to play a lot of games. He will help them win regular season games. He will take some load off of Donovan Mitchell. Yes, this does not fix the Cavs' point of attack defense problem and perimeter defense problem whatsoever. We'll see what happens in the playoffs. James Harden, like famous playoff dropper, I don't think he's going to get them to the promised land. But I don't know. Maybe he has like a good game too or something. And then we're all like, hey, James Harden, playoff performer. Maybe Donovan Mitchell can carry them home in a game 7. Lord knows he's going to have to. But yeah, for the Cavs like this, I like this. Especially if the medicals on Garland are as bad as they seem from the outside in. We're getting reports that they were like putting plates in his shoes so he could like move and run. That seems bad that your 26-year-old point guard can't move without plates in his shoes. Like, I don't know. Kind of scary season for Darius Garland here. But yeah, if the Cavs felt like Garland wasn't going to be healthy, wasn't going to be ready and not able to contribute, and Donovan Mitchell is breathing down their throat telling them that he wants another ball handler, well, you go get another ball handler, and James Harden will handle the goddamn ball. So I like this fine enough for the Cavs. For the Clippers, like, if James Harden was just going to ask out, like, Darius Garland is not a bad young talent play. He's a former all-star. He's 26 years old. The injury stuff scares me, but there's no pressure in Los Angeles, so maybe he can just like try to rehab it the best he can. If he needs to sit out the rest of this year or whatever, so be it. Like, they're in no rush to have him come back. And then, you know, the Clippers get a second round pick out of this. Whoop-de-doo. Yeah, interesting talent play from the Clippers perspective. I really wonder if they could have gotten like something else, maybe a first rounder or a couple of other younger interesting guys, but maybe that's in return for like worse contracts. I don't know. This will be interesting. Time will tell on this one. Shout out to James Harden. Unfortunately, there's no strip clubs in Cleveland, but I'm sure he will find a way. I don't really want to talk about this deal because who cares? This is a 3-teamer where the aforementioned Jacques Landale, who was received in the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade, got traded to the Atlanta Hawks, I think for like a second rounder or something. And then the Jazz get Lonzo Ball and another second round pick from the Cavs, and the Cavs get a whole lot of nothing because they want to save a bunch of money on their luxury tax bill. Good on them. Lonzo Ball is going to get bought out by the Jazz. We'll see where he ends up signing with. Probably I don't know, LA or some shit. Jacques Landale just had like 25 and 11 for the Hawks tonight as they get a win over the Utah Jazz. So shout out to Jacques Landale, Hawks legend. And shout out to the Jazz for every year being like the team that buys everybody out of their contracts. They're just facilitators extraordinaire. Let's move on, shall we? Let's move on to the shining light of my life. Oh, I can't, like LeBron, I can't believe this is my life right now. Instagram story, the Oklahoma City Thunder traded for Jared McCain. And all they had to give up was a 2026 Houston Rockets first-round draft pick and 3 second-rounders, none of which are good at all. Oh, my God. I love this trade. I was a huge Jared McCain guy, and there were kind of these rumblings, and I thought that Jared McCain ticked some Thunder, like, draft boxes. I really kind of wanted them to just take the leap and go draft him because coming out of Duke, like, he was just an excellent floor spacer. And then, of course, last year in his rookie year with Philly, has those magical first, like, 25, wow, he played like 25, 30 games his rookie year. He had those magical run where he was just, like, averaging 25 a night or something for that Philly team without Tyrese Maxey or Joel Embiid. And then he tears his meniscus last year, and then tears, he had like a thumb sprain or something before the season started that kept him out for a little bit. Coming back from injury in his second year, he's not been great. He's been very up and down, but Nick Nurse, like, was just keeping him out of the rotation, or he'd play 15 minutes, or he'd play 5 minutes, or he'd play 25 minutes, and just nothing was consistent for Jared. And I could understand how, like, a guy who's in his second year, and now Philly has, Tyrese Maxey is having a first-team All-NBA type of season, and Joel Embiid is now back healthy and playing games, and Paul George is back healthy and playing games, and VJ Edgecombe, which is a top 3 pick, is, like, starting for this team, and he looks incredible. And Quentin Grimes, who Jared McCain never played with, is, like, a very important sixth man to this team. And just, like, all this shit changed from McCain's start of his rookie season to now, and he wasn't really finding his way. And I think part of that was just, like, it's just hard for young guys, and a lot of it was situational to me. Like, we saw what he could do with the ball in his hands last year, which nobody really anticipated, but he showcased the ability to, like, fight and get downhill. He had a nice bit of burst and speed to him. He's a solid passer. He just plays with so much joy and happiness. I love him. He will fit right in with this OKC team. And then, of course, the shooting. I mean, this guy shoots off of movement. Sometimes I genuinely mean this. He looks like Steph Curry, like, where he just runs around and relocates and dumps to the baseline, then back out to the corner, or, like, down to the free throw line, then pops back out to the wing, like, just moving constantly, and can shoot in all sorts of ways, pull-ups, side steps, catch and shoot. He's so good, and he's only 6'2". That's the big problem with him, right? He doesn't have a crazy wingspan. He's not super athletic, although he's quick, he's fast, and he's pretty poor defensively. But the Thunder have a ton of infrastructure to cover his defensive woes. I really don't worry about that, because the Thunder aren't going to be relying on him for playoff contributions anyway. This is a bet for the future. They've got him on a super cheap contract for the next 2 years after this, and he's a great bet as a guy who can just come off the bench and be a microwave scorer, floor spacer, play on lineups with Shea, without Shea. Like, the Thunder just need another guy who can space the floor and handle the ball a little bit. Like, outside of Jalen Williams, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and AJ Mitchell, they just don't have anyone that can do that on the roster. And it's been a thing all season. It's been a thing last year. They need another, like, tertiary ball handler, and Jared McCain is a great bet on that. And again, all you give up is, like, the 2026 Houston pick, which is probably going to be, like, the 25th pick in this year's draft. I don't give a shit about that. OKC wasn't going to roster that guy anyway. And then 3 second rounders. Like, who cares? OKC doesn't have enough roster spots to care about, like, the 48th pick in every draft every year. So I love this for the Thunder. I could not gush about this enough. Maybe it becomes nothing, but, like, I think this could seriously be league changing if McCain hits in the way that I know is possible. For the 76ers, I don't know. Like, I guess they're just like, I get it. You have VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey, Quentin Grimes, and Jared McCain. You can't play 3 of those guys on the court at the same time. The defense is just not good enough. So you take the one you think is least valued to you, and you move off of him for more firsts. The only thing to me is, like, I thought they would go out and get some extra help for this year, and it looks like they're just going to take this into the offseason. Maybe they're going to roster that first-round pick or something. Who knows? This could be an awesome trade for the Thunder. I love Jared McCain. I'm very excited to watch him in a Thunder jersey. But we'll move on from me just being happy. Oh, just gushing my heart out. Raptors ducked the luxury tax. Who gives a shit? Chris Paul got traded to the Raptors, but they told him, don't come to Toronto, buddy. Just stay right where you are with your family. The Nets got Ochai Agbaji in a second-round pick, and then the Clippers received nothing. Now the Clippers have a roster spot. The Raptors are going to waive Chris Paul, and they get under the luxury tax, and then the Nets receive a second-round pick for their troubles. Let's move on to a fun little trade. So this is a trade between the Hornets and the Bulls. This is the Coby White trade. So the Hornets received Coby White and Mike Conley from the Bulls in exchange for Colin Sexton, Ousmane Dieng. Ousmane Dieng he got rerouted to Milwaukee somehow, so he is in Milwaukee, and then 3 second-round picks. This is good on the Hornets. I like this for them, especially if they think they can retain Coby White, who is on an expiring contract and will be a free agent in this offseason. Coby White is basically Colin Sexton, but with, like, more upside. He's a bit taller. He has more experience genuinely, like, in playoff settings than Colin Sexton, who's never been to the playoffs in his entire career. Coby White has a bit more size. He takes threes with more frequency. He has a little bit more off the bounce juice. Like, this is just upgrading the Colin Sexton spot, and I think that's perfectly fine. I think the reports are that Mike Conley was going to get bought out or something like that, so he's not going to Charlotte. For the Bulls, like, you know, this has been said about the Bulls, like, they probably could have gotten first-round picks for Coby White in the past. They should have just done that in the past because holding on to him until now has done nothing for them. But I guess I'm glad they went out and got, you know, a few second-rounders and, like, something for him, because otherwise he was just going to expire going into the offseason and probably leave in free agency. So why not get something for him? I don't know how much Colin Sexton has left on his deal. That's actually interesting to me because Colin Sexton is the kind of guy who they could theoretically reroute somewhere in the offseason for another second-round pick or something. So they might be able to get a little tiny bit more value out of this trade if they want. What are we looking at? So he's also expiring, Colin Sexton. Okay, interesting. All right, whatever. It's what it is. So Colin Sexton's expiring, so never mind. Ignore that. Shout out to the Bulls, 3 second-round picks. Shout out to Coby White. I'm a big fan of yours. Shout out to Charlotte, man. They're going to make the play-in this year. They're a fun team, okay? But let's move on to another. I said earlier that Jaren Jackson Jr. was the most surprising, like, traded player in the NBA, and that's true. But if you would have given me, like, 15 to 20 guesses if you would have told me, 10 days ago, Anthony Davis is going to get traded at the trade deadline, where's he going? You could have given me probably 29 guesses, and I don't know if I would have gotten to the Washington Wizards. This one is shocking. The Trae Young trade, like, kind of made some sense because you could argue that, like, oh, this team's always struggled. They've never had, like, a point guard that's always been their area of struggle throughout their rebuild. So like bring in a veteran. They were going to have a shit ton of cap space anyways. So bring in a vet point guard who can kind of maybe just help the young guys figure shit out. Help guys like Alex Sarr. Why not? You gave up basically nothing to get Trae Young, but the AD trade is shocking. This tells me, much like the Jazz, the Wizards are like, all right, we're over this. The draft thing isn't working so well for us, and we're going to go ahead and quick hit the little speed up button. We're going to try to anyways, and we're going to try to get better starting next year. So let's break down this trade. We'll talk about the Wizards side of this deal first. So the Wizards receive Anthony Davis, D'Angelo Russell, Jaden Hardy, and Dante Exum. Dante Exum had a ACL tear right before the season started or something, so he's basically just dead money. It's a contract I think that's going to expire and will be nothing. Jaden Hardy, interesting guy, former G League Ignite alum. He was very highly touted coming out of high school, was kind of meh in G League Ignite, stays in the draft, goes in the second round. He's had minute flashes over the years of being a guy who can just be like a microwave scorer, but the defense, the inconsistent shot selection, the inefficiencies have all kind of held him back over the years. I don't know. I've always liked Jaden Hardy. He does some things sometimes where you're just like, oh shit, oh wow. And then other times he's really tragically bad. I think this is fine. Give him a shot. See if he can do anything. D'Angelo Russell, please get out of my face. I never want to talk about D'Angelo Russell ever again. And then Anthony Davis, of course. This is interesting. So the Wizards are going to go into next year with, a trade or a starting lineup that looks something like Trae Young, Trey Johnson, who's their first round pick from this year, rookie. Who's starting at the 3? Maybe Keyshawn George at the 3 probably, and then Alex Sarr and Anthony Davis. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody, but that's interesting, I guess, at least to me. It depends how much AD is going to play, really. You have to assume that the Wizards are going to bring AD in and just say, hey, go home, man. Rest up, big fella. We got a tank to put on for the rest of this year. We're going to go out and try and get another top 5 pick in this year's draft. AD, you just get well, my brother. You get well, my man. And they're going to see next year what he can contribute. I'm not an AD fan whatsoever. I think the injuries, as we've seen, they don't get better. But he's also been in situations where he's been pressured to maybe come back quick from a lot of these things. The Wizards should give him plenty of time to rehab his body. And if he can play 50 to 60 games next year, he might be able to provide real value. I do think AD and Sarr is an interesting front court option. I really like Alex Sarr, and I think he's a 5, but also he's a really great rim defender. He gets because Washington's point of attack defense is so poor. I think he's probably still number 1 in the entire NBA for shots defended at the rim, and he has really really good rim defense stats, on par with or close to that of Chet Holmgren's and Victor Wembanyama's. He's a fantastic rim defender. But AD famously doesn't want to play the 5. And so I don't know which of those two is the 5, which of them is the 4. If Alex Sarr is the 4, I don't love that fit offensively. Alex Sarr has made a lot of strides this year in being a guy that is heavy in pick and roll, not pick and pop. Getting easy shots at the rim has really helped Sarr expand his game, whereas he was one of the worst jump shooters in the league last year. AD also, not for nothing, is one of the worst volume jump shooters in the entire NBA from anywhere on the court. So I think it's a weird offensive fit because I think they both do the same things well on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, like, they could be a very strong and formidable front court duo. I have no doubt about that. But the offense is weird. I don't know. We can talk real quick about what the Mavericks received for AD. It's basically nothing. So they got Chris Middleton, who's, contract filler. They got AJ Johnson, who's a young guy who's now been traded twice on his rookie scale deal. Malachi Branham, whole lot of nothing. I think Malachi Branham actually got rerouted somewhere. And then Marvin Bagley III, who's secretly been a decent backup big this year, but a backup big nonetheless. They got 2 first-round picks. One is OKC's 2026 first-rounder, so that's going to be like the 30th overall pick. They also got the Warriors 2030 first-round pick. That is protected, and I think it has like really heavy protections on it. So basically 2 bad or fake first, and then 3 second-round picks. I mean, granted that a year ago, this guy got traded for Luka Doncic, and then, a year later, the best you can get is like 2 first-round picks in the 20s. Like, it's just depressing, man. The Mavs have Cooper Flag, so at the end of the day, they can, this doesn't matter all that much. Maybe we can forget about this. And I like this from the Mavericks' perspective of just being like, all right, let's move on from AD. Just get this over with. We're done. Just be done with the whole AD business. We'll wipe this nasty shit out of the way. We're going to rebuild around Cooper Flag. We're going to tank for the rest of this year, see what we can get in the draft, and then move on from there. That's fine. So we'll see for the Wizards next year where this puts them at, whether AD actually plays some games next year. I'll be interested to see. Hoping the best for him because I don't like injuries derailing people's career. So shouts to the Wizards for doing some crazy shit. They basically got Anthony Davis and Trae Young for nothing. If those guys can actually play games and be somewhat healthy next year, they're not bad moves, I'd say, whatsoever. All right, moving on to the next. Another luxury tax dump. This was the Charlotte Hornets getting Tyus Jones and 2 second-round picks from the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic received cash considerations. Good jobs on the Hornets. You get a couple second-round picks for taking on a guy whose contract will expire here soon. You save the Magic some money. Who cares? We'll move on from that. The Knicks and Bulls. The Knicks received Dalen Terry, Dalen Terry gets rerouted to New Orleans for Jose Alvarado. And then the Bulls received Gershon Yabusele. Yabu was a guy who'd been out of the NBA for a couple of years. He had a really awesome play in the Olympics. The Sixers signed him to a contract after that Olympics run. He was really good for the 76ers during the 24-25 season. And then the Knicks signed him in the offseason to kind of be a backup 4 or a small ball 5. Just hasn't worked in New York this year, and it was heavily rumored that the Knicks were going to explore moving off of him. So they do. They trade Yabu to the Bulls, and then in effect get Jose Alvarado from the Pelicans, which I like. Miles McBride, it was just announced, or old Deucey McBride is going to miss quite a bit of time here with a sports hernia, which is really sad. So Jose Alvarado is a really nice pickup for them. I guess shouts to the Bulls. I think the Bulls got like a second-round pick in this or something. Whatever, good on them. Yabu had a 15-10 game for them tonight in his first game. So hey, the Bulls have no big men right now. So Yabu's gonna get a lot of minutes headed down the end of the season. All right, the next trade is former Indiana Hoosiers legend Trace Jackson Davis being traded to the Toronto Raptors for a second-round pick. The Raptors were in the market for a big man. I guess Trace Jackson Davis is what you settle on. He's not been great this year. He's a little undersized. His finishing around the rim is pretty bad, but maybe you just take a shot on him because I think during his rookie season he really showed a couple flashes. For the Warriors, I guess I don't know if this was just freeing up a roster spot or something for a buyout guy, probably something like that. But shouts to them for getting Lakers second round pick this year, is what it is. Let's move on. Oh, big time. big time trade coming up next. Jonathan Kuminga, who, for years now, we've been talking about Kuminga. When will he get moved? Are the Warriors going to trade him? The Warriors going to move on from Jonathan Kuminga. Well, boy, howdy did they. They traded Jonathan Kuminga for the big man, the Latvian laser, the unicorn, Kristaps Porzingis. This trade as a whole, several layers of stinky to me, man. This one sucks. I'm so glad we never have to talk about Jonathan Kuminga ever again. Not a good NBA player as it stands right now. Don't really know why the Hawks did this. I guess maybe they were just like, who gives a shit? We'll give him a look, I guess. They have a team option on him for this summer, so they could decline that, let him become a free agent. They also take back Buddy Hield in this trade, I guess. He's got like 2 more years on his deal or something, which is kind of crazy, and he's been really bad this year. But I don't know. Buddy, every time he goes to a new team, is awesome for like the first 30 games, and then teams eventually hate him. So shout out to the Hawks. They got a great run with Buddy coming up here soon. The Warriors get Kristaps Porzingis. I see a lot of people like talking about this being like, you see all the ESPN graphics where they're like, oh, the Warriors, what do you think of this lineup? Can the Warriors make some noise in the playoffs? Spoiler alert, Kristaps Porzingis has played like 15 games this season. 15 goddamn games. He's not doing shit. Like, I'm sorry. I think this dude's career is like over. I love Kristaps, but this illness he's dealing with is just like, it's detrimental. It just I can't even remember what it was. It wasn't POTS. It was just like he wasn't getting like blood to his heart or something. But he's obviously just unwell. Physically, just unhealthy. It's very sad to see him go out like this, but he's played 16 games. 16? That's not very many games. He's not going to play for the Warriors really at all. Although if he does, yeah, he'd be a good fit. But he's not. And then he's going to expire this offseason. So shout out to that. I'm going to bury Jonathan Kuminga in the furthest reaches of my brain and never think about him ever again, probably. Move on to another pick, the Lakers. The Lakers, their big move at the trade deadline, which, like, let's be honest, the Lakers were never going to do anything. They didn't have the assets to do anything. LeBron is going to leave as a free agent. Like, for the Lakers, their most valuable asset is going to be cap space moving forward, and that's that. They're not in the market to, like, make big trades right now. Not for this team. Like, this team's not winning a championship. But the one move they did make was going out and getting Luke Kennard in exchange for Gabe Vincent and a second-round pick. I guess the Hawks are just done with Luke Kennard. The Hawks have done a really funny thing over the past couple of days where like, they keep trading out shooters and then getting, like, really good shooters in return. Like, now they have Buddy Hield on the roster, but they also gave away Luke Kennard and Vit Krejci, earlier. Wacko, bonky bullshit going on with the Hawks, I guess. They just want all these shooting 2 guards, but the Lakers get Luke Kennard, who is technically the quote-unquote best shooter in the NBA by percentage, but that's because he literally only ever takes wide-open threes. The team that's able to convince Luke Kennard to just take 6 threes a game will be the team that finally unlocks Luke Kennard, but I don't think he'll ever do that. Shouts out to Gabe Vincent. I guess he's an expiring contract for the Hawks. He won't be a whole lot of nothing. The Hawks get a second-round pick out of this. We'll see if the Lakers and, Luka can maybe unlock Kennard a little bit. You could see how he could have some big games for them. But again, he's just a guy who doesn't take enough threes. He should take way more threes. He takes like 3 a game. The dude should be taking 8. But alas, Luke Kennard does not. We're going to keep it pushing, y'all. Very, very interesting pick here. Next, we have the Timberwolves going out and getting Ayo Dosunmu from the Chicago Bulls, along with Julian Phillips, in exchange for Rob Dillingham, Leonard Miller, and 4 second-round picks. All right, let me say 2 things up top. Love this for the Timberwolves. Hate this for the Timberwolves. The process of getting here, somebody's going to have to do it, and maybe it's just me. Somebody has to talk about, like, the poor process. that the Timberwolves have had in trying to build a roster around Anthony Edwards. They've exhausted basically all of their picks at this point. They don't really have any first rounders left, and they never really had any good young prospects outside of Anthony Edwards to show for it. At the same time, they've made 2 Western Conference Finals, but, like this past offseason, they elect to sign Naz Reid in favor of re-signing Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Nickeil Alexander-Walker goes and signs with the Atlanta Hawks. He's now having like an incredible season with the Hawks, and you could just tell how much the Wolves have been missing him this season. Well, now the Wolves go out and they get basically another Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Ayo Dosunmu. He's a guy who's like a 6'4", 6'5" guard. He's kind of a toolsy, do-it-all, everything. He has a nice plus-size wingspan. He's a really strong point-of-attack defender. This year, he's shooting like 45% from 3, which is crazy. And he's doing it on like decent amounts of volume, so I think the shooting is kind of real. Maybe not 45% real, but like 38% real, probably. He can handle the ball a little bit. He's not a traditional, like, run your offense point guard, but he's capable passer and all that. He's a nice, just toolsy combo guard. Really like Ayo Dosunmu, super helpful player. He will be very good for them. But we got to talk about how we got here. Again, the Timberwolves already had basically Ayo Dosunmu on their roster last year, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They let Nickeil Alexander walk in free agency in favor of a guy like Rob Dillingham, who was a first-round pick that they took 2 years ago. Mind you, they traded 2 first-rounders to trade into the 8th spot with the San Antonio Spurs in order to draft Rob Dillingham. So 2 first-rounders to draft Rob Dillingham, and now 2 years later, you're offloading that guy along with 4 second-round picks for an archetype of player that you had on your roster last year and technically did have the capabilities to keep on your roster. I'm sorry, I keep shaking my camera. I hate this process. Like, this is a bad mismanagement of your assets here, and when you have a guy who's just as good as Anthony Edwards, but you also have these other kind of aging stars like Rudy Gobert, who knows next year if Rudy Gobert is just like all of a sudden immediately is like not himself. Like, what do you do then? It feels like you don't have unlimited time with this version of the Wolves to make them like true contenders. And the asset management has just been pretty poor all around. I like Ayo Dosunmu, but they better retain him in free agency. He's an expiring contract. They need to retain him. So this is going to be a good on-the-court basketball fit. You could see him like really contributing in the playoffs. I hope they retain him in the offseason, because otherwise this is like a huge waste. For the Bulls, like, I don't think Rob Dillingham is an NBA player at all. I didn't think that during the draft. It's been 2 years, and the Wolves, who were enamored with him at one point, basically just dumped him off for a whole lot of nothing. So, like, if that doesn't tell you where he's at in his career, I don't know what to tell you. I think he's a whole lot of nothing, but the Bulls will get a short little look at him, see if there's anything you can squeeze at him. Leonard Miller's interesting, but I don't know. I think he's like a third-year player, and he's just not played much at all, but he's a lengthy plus-size wing with, like, theoretical pass and shoot capabilities. He can kind of, like, run the floor. Interesting thought exercise as a basketball player, but just there's never been any product on the court to suggest that he's, like, a useful NBA player whatsoever. But maybe you get a little look at him. Maybe there's something there. And then 4 second-rounders, that's fine. Again, you could have traded Ayo probably at some point for a first-round pick, and they should have done that. But alas, this is fine because Ayo is presumably going to leave in the offseason, I guess. I don't know. Bulls getting a lot of second-round picks in this during this trade deadline. But we're going to move on here. This is a trade that I had mentioned earlier. This is the Knicks going out and getting Jose Alvarado from the New Orleans Pelicans in exchange for Dalen Terry, who is who they got in the Gershon Yabusele trade, and 2 second-rounders. I like this. Jose Alvarado is like a really, really fun basketball player. He's super undersized. He's like 6 foot flat, which means he's probably like 5'11", but he's a New York guy at heart. He plays his ass off. He's a dogged defender. You could definitely see him just like riling Madison Square Garden up. I love that for them. And again, with Deuce McBride out, like, this is fine to go get a guy who could maybe be a part of your playoff rotation, but can definitely contribute in the regular season. I think that's good. Let's keep it moving. Giannis Antetokounmpo did not get traded. They have that listed here. Don't have to talk about that now. I'll probably talk about it later. And then our final big deal that we need to discuss, and that's the Indiana Pacers making a Kevin Pritchard, you are a gambling man, my brother. You are. Somebody don't let this dude around the slot machines, because boy, we are playing with fire with this with this trade. So, if you didn't see it, the Indiana Pacers go out and they trade for Ivica Zubac, who, you know, most of NBA fans were like, oh shit, whoa, the Clippers are just tearing it down. They traded Harden, now they've traded Zubac. They're second and third best players. Like, they're really just tearing down this version of the Clippers, which is fine. I would have argued that they should do this anyway. So, like, this is fine to trade off Ivica Zubac. He's on a really good contract. I think he's a great center. Super strong defensively. He's a monster in the post. He's just a huge, massive, giant dude. Excellent rebounder, of course. Wonderful screener. I'm curious in Indiana's kind of perimeter-oriented offense what this will look like. But Rick Carlisle's like maybe the smartest head coach out there. I have no doubt in my mind that he will do plenty of great, smart, awesome things with Zubac, and it'll really work. I think he's an okay short roll decision maker as a passer. You know, the Pacers made Miles Turner look like a decent passer in their system, so Zubac, I think, is more than capable of finding his way for this roster. And he's also on like a really good contract. I think he's in like the first year of a 3-year extension at like less than $20 million a year. That's huge for this Pacers team that does not like to spend money whatsoever. So, you know, it seems like Tyrese Halliburton and you know, the rest of the Pacers front office were feeling some urgency to go out and trade for a center. And so they did. They went out and they got a damn good one that I would have said last year, you know, was arguably an All-NBA third team level big. He was just that good defensively, and he averaged like 17 and 10 last year or something, 17 and 12, like really solid numbers. Now, you know, this year I think the numbers have been worse on a whole. I think he's just been worse overall, but a lot of that had to do with the weird start that the Clippers had to their season altogether. You know, you know, ever since he had this injury in December, he came back from it. The Clippers were winning a bunch of games, and he kind of looked like he was going back to his old self a little bit. So, you know, I don't have crazy concerns about like a talent level drop off or whatever. But yeah, we can see 14 and a half points a game this year, shooting over 60% from the field, 11 rebounds, 3.5 offensive rebounds a game, almost 2.5 assists. So, solid numbers. Again, great defensive big man. I like this. If the Pacers felt that they needed to get a big man now, then so be it. But there is an upside and downside aspect to this trade. So let's talk about the Clippers received. So the Clippers received Benedict Mathurin. I know I have a lot of Pacers friends. A lot of my friends are Pacers fans, and they loved Mathurin. I'm a bit lower on him. I think at best, in his best role, he's like a 6-man spark plug, like, dog. But I don't think he's a starter-level wing player, at least not for, like, a really good basketball team, just because of the play style and the limited passing, the defense, blah, blah, blah. But, hey, what else did the Clippers got going on? Like,
we can see what kind of contract they offer him in the offseason and see, maybe a guy like Ty Lue can extract different value from him. Sometimes these guys just need to change the scenery to really get better. And, I believe in Benedict as a worker. Seems like a great individual. I have nothing to complain about there. The style of play, especially for this Pacers team, it seems as though the Pacers front office, Rick Carlisle, everyone kind of felt like he wasn't going to work long term with them. So if you need to move on, I totally understand. The Pacers also give up Isaiah Jackson. I had some hope for Isaiah Jackson this year. I think he'd look a lot better if you had a guy like Tyrese Halliburton around. The Pacers don't really have a table-setting point guard, and Isaiah Jackson is nothing without a table-setting point guard. He's been pretty underwhelming this year, and I think moving on from him is a perfectly acceptable thing to do. And then the real gamble is that the Pacers gave up 2 first-round picks. One of them being a 2029 unprotected first. That's whatever. Tyrese Halliburton will probably still be on the team. Pascal Siakam will be 34, 35 at that time. But Halliburton will still be around. You'd assume that the Pacers will still be competitive. Zubac could probably still be around at that time too. But the real big deal is that the Pacers traded their 2026 first-round pick. So their first-round pick in this year's draft. It is protected 1 through 4 and 10 through 30. So basically, if this pick falls in numbers 5 through 9 in this upcoming draft, the Clippers receive the pick. If the pick falls in 1 through 4 or 10 through 30, which it's not going to fall through 10 through 30. So if it falls 1 through 4, Pacers keep the pick, and then the Clippers receive a 2031 first-round unprotected pick. Huge damn gamble. This obviously signals to me that the Pacers are okay, this draft has 4 guys at the top of it, and outside of that, we're not really interested otherwise. So they're going to protect this thing 1 through 4. If it lands 1 through 4, great. They'll take one of the 4 guys at the top of their board, probably one of Cam Boozer, Caleb Wilson, AJ DeBonso, or Darren Peterson if they get the number 1 pick. And if it's not one of those guys that they can draft, they just don't really care, seemingly. If the Pacers feel that way, then sure, whatever. I don't feel that way whatsoever. I think this is a huge gamble that you did not have to do. Let's say they just didn't make this trade at the deadline, right? And they wait till draft night. Maybe you bring back Benedict Mathurin on nobody wants to sign him in the offseason. So you're able to bring back Benedict Mathurin on a 1+1 prove it kind of deal. And then you're at the draft. Let's say this pick fell to number 5 or something. And the Pacers are oh man, we don't really like anybody at the number 5 spot in this year's draft. You're telling me if you went to the Clippers at that point and you were hey Clippers, we'll trade you Isaiah Jackson and whatever matching salary you want, plus the number 5 overall pick and maybe a second rounder, 2 second rounders, something like that, or another protected first or something. You tell me the Clippers turn that down? You're telling me the Clippers turn down a trade that's the number 5 pick plus matching salary plus another protected first? I don't think the Clippers turn that down. I don't think they turn that down at all. So I don't understand why you run the risk right now of possibly losing this pick plus another unprotected first plus Benedict Mathurin. It feels really risky. And maybe we get to the draft lottery and the Pacers pick ends up at number 2 or 1 or 3 and everybody can breathe a big sigh of relief and move on. But in the second half of this NBA season, post All-Star break, there's going to be so many teams tanking. I mean, we could think about 8 teams that could want to take. If I pull up the standings right now, let's look at the East. The Pacers are 13-38. They do not have the worst record in the NBA right now. That belongs to the Sacramento Kings. So the Pacers have the second worst record in the league, and there's 2 other teams with 13 wins right now, by the way, the Brooklyn Nets and the New Orleans Pelicans. So right now, you're talking about the Kings, Pelicans, Pacers, and Nets, all of whom have about the same record as the Pacers. If the Pacers win a few games going down the stretch, like that's catastrophic for them because those guys will immediately move in behind them and they'll be happy to be there. On top of just the Pacers, you think about the Wizards don't want to win games. They're 14-36. In the West, with the Utah Jazz probably don't want to win games. They don't want to give their pick to OKC. The Dallas Mavericks kind of signaled that they don't want to win games. They want to get a good draft pick pair with Cooper Flag. The Memphis Grizzlies don't want to win basketball games. The Los Angeles Clippers, who have 10 more wins, so they're not going to catch up, but like the Clippers don't care about winning games this season. The Bucks don't really care about winning games this season. Like there are so many teams that in the back half of this year are not going to care about winning, and if the Pacers fuck this up and they don't end up as like the worst team in the association, this has such a chance to go wrong. If you're not familiar, by the way, the NBA draft lottery works right now. Basically, the top 3 teams, the top 3 worst teams, so the top 3 teams with the best odds at the number 1 pick all have about the same odds of getting the number 1 pick. It's like 14% chance at getting the number 1 pick. But what really dictates your destiny in this draft lottery is your position in the standings determines how far you can fall back. So you can only fall back 4 spots from your position. So if you have the number 1 on overall odds, the worst pick you can get is the 5th pick. If you have the second worst overall odds, the furthest you can fall back is the 6th pick, like so on and so forth. So there's a lot. Like if the Pacers end up with the 3rd worst record in the NBA or something, they could fall all the way to 7 or 6 or 5 and they give away their pick. Like this has the chance to be catastrophic, even if they're the worst team in the association, which again, they're not right now. If they're the worst team in the association, there's still a world in which they give away their pick. And like if you lost this entire season, you just lose games all season long. You lose Miles Turner in free agency. You know, you lost Benedict Mathurin now. Like, important parts of your team that went to the finals. And if the only thing you get out of that is, like, Ivica Zubac and no top-end rookie talent to bring in, like, oh, man, that could be catastrophically bad. Or this could be nothing, and I'm freaking out over nothing, and in a few months' time, like, we won't even remember this conversation happened. That's all to say, this is a big, big goddamn risk to me. I probably wouldn't have took it if you had asked me, but hey, maybe the Pacers, it seems like they were facing a lot of pressure to get this done. So, what do I know? What do I know? Maybe Kevin Pritchard had a gun to his head and, Mel Simon said, make the goddamn deal. And he did. So we shall see. This trade can only truly be judged on the night of the draft lottery. So fingers crossed for all my Pacers fans that this does not go sideways. I really hope it doesn't, because that would be bad. But that is all of our major transactions from this NBA deadline. Hopefully this is not a boring episode. I try to keep people entertained. We got through everything I wanted to talk about. Thank you so much. If you made it all the way to the end, you're a special, beautiful, magical, amazing individual. If this is your first time listening, go ahead and follow along. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you could possibly think of to listen to my voice. I'm probably on there somewhere. If you want to follow me at any of my other socials, there will be a link tree available in the description below. Please feel free to reach out to me on my social medias and tell me whether I'm dumb or smart about any of these, my opinions that I voiced in this episode. And I don't have anything else for you. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We're going to look forward to some of these guys making their debuts with their new teams. Can't wait. Appreciate you all. Catch you in the next one. Okay, and goodbye.